Hello, good evening and welcome to Magic in Mind. My name is Maggie Rose Cunningham and I'm here this evening to host a lovely session working with you on rune magics. Thinking about that in its broadest possible terms. Why do we choose to work with runes, and how can we start to initiate a practice with them? So as people arrive, I'm going to ask a question. I'll ask it a couple of times because I know that people can take their time to sort of come into the room. But the question is, what does the word rune mean? What does the word rune mean? So I'm going to ask for answers in the chat box. Just put your first thoughts in there. No one's going to be like, oh, that was terribly wrong. No, this is just, this is a starting point for us. So what does rune mean? You could say, what does rune mean for you as well? But yeah, I'd love to know. So answers in the chat box. I can see there's quite a few people here. So it's lovely to see all of you. Hi, Suki. Hi, Suzanne. While you're having a think about that, what does rune mean? I'm going to run you through what we're going to be doing this evening. So as I've said, we're going to be looking at runes. We're going to be looking at starting a rune practice. Why should I start a rune practice and how do I start a rune practice? We're going to be doing a little bit of celebrating the end of this lunar cycle and initiating the next lunar cycle. So I'm going to be asking you what your celebrations are and what your intentions are for the coming new moon. We have a lovely new moon in Lagus, the rune of water, and the unseen and growth and fertility and life coming tomorrow. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of the lunar month, and I do that in a lot more depth in Suna's Star Wheel. If runic astrology is something that really interests you, then that's where you want to go for that, like week by week, what's happening with the planetary movements and how you can work with them. And then we're going to have our stay and play session because it is the new moon. So for those of you who are here with me from the beginning through to the end, I'm going to ask you what rune you are working with at the moment, which rune are you partnering with at the moment, and we'll do some mini readings. So I hope that all sounds good. I have got some answers in the chat box from people about what rune means. So Lisa says, hidden. Yes, absolutely. Hidden. And we can think about that as being like a secret, sometimes like a secret or a mystery or a whisper, something that isn't like immediately available to us, which remains the case in the modern day. The runes are something that have to be learnt in the same ways that we have to learn to read and to write. They're an alphabet after all. So absolutely. And Suki says, runes for me are a language, a way we communicate with life and nature. I love that. It is. I think that you're right. And if we look at it, so many of the runes have they are grounded within their meanings. Star or day or year. It's all about nature and our relationship with nature. So I think that you're right. There's something about the language of nature, the language of time maybe as well, the language of fate as well that comes through. And Suki, we've got a messenger, a voice, excitement, magic, mystery, healer. Yes. That sense of excitement and that mystery comes through so strongly with them, doesn't it? And I think for some people it can be off-putting because they can look at their shapes and they can feel a little bit like, ooh, what does that mean? What does that mean? And it can be a little bit off-putting. Whereas for others of us, the first time I ever saw a rune, it literally felt like electricity went through my body. It felt to me as if they were something that lived in me, that I just needed to learn how to literally voice on my tongue. That was sort of ready to be expressed through is the way that they felt. Maggie says, runes for me are a language, a way we... have I got those confused the other way around? Maggie, I got the two of you confused, didn't I? Apologies, Maggie. So yes, I was just reading the chat. I was all wonky in my chat box there. So yes, you really said a way of communicating with life and nature. So it means secret, hidden, absolutely. Sarah literally means secret or whisper. Yes, to me it's a means of interacting with the flow of magic. Yeah, the flow of the unseen, the flow of possibility, the flow of potential. All of these things come through. To me, they help us to not only to speak to the land and to time and to space and to fate, but also those sort of whispers of the ancestors. They can speak to us and offer us wisdom that we might have lost at the conscious level, or may have been overlaid with a lot of very important learning Like the learning of technology, the learning of the scientific, which has been the sort of dominant paradigm, and there's been a reason for that, but it's almost like they're sort of saying, we're whispering now that there is a need for that balancing. So I can feel that with the runes as well. And I think a lot of what you've described is also the reason why we would work with the runes. Many of you will know that we can work with them for healing purposes. We can work with them for magical purposes to bring out change and transformation. We can work with them for mystical purposes to literally journey through them as doorways, or to work with their songs, to receive wisdom from nature and from the unknown and beyond the veils and into the worlds that, within the northern tradition, the 8 other worlds, Midgard, our realm being the one sort of sitting there in the centre. We like to be in the centre, don't we? And they offer us access to these places of the unseen. We can work with them for seership as well, to connect in with fate, with destiny, with what's possible, what's probable. We can do all of those, and there are many systems in the world that allow us to do that. And one of the reasons that I love the runes is because they're sort of like a bit of an all singing, all dancing system, aren't they? That we can work with them in so many different ways. But I think that what you've described there, that sense of this sort of secret hidden language that is both exists beyond the veils, but is also present, and it's present within us right now. We're speaking in, I'm speaking in English, which is one of the daughter languages originally of Anglo-Saxon and going all the way back to Proto-Germanic. So yes, I would agree with all of your translations or your interpretations of runes. I wanted to add into that the word rune, as you rightly said, sort of the secret or the whisper or the mystery, people will often look at this particular set of symbols here and they'll say, these are the runes. But these are the Elder Futhark. They are a set of runes. They are a particular rune alphabet. Futhark, by the way, it means alphabet, really. It is made up in the same way as alphabet is made up of alpha and beta, the two letters of the Latin alphabet. Futhark is made up of Feu, Urus, Thoruses, Ansus, Redo, and Kinas, which are the first 5, I want to say, of the runes in the Alpha Futhark. Now I need to count it to make sure. 6 of the runes in the Elder Futhark. So Futhark means alphabet. And but the word rune can mean more than that. So it also means the Old Norse, the Icelandic, the Anglo-Saxon, which are all daughter Futharks, but it has a wider meaning as well. So there are other Futharks or alphabets that are made up of symbols like this, which are loosely related. We can see congruent symbols, or we can see symbols that might have been moved from one country to the other, but then there are others brought in as well. And we also have runes that are symbols that have been used particularly in magical circles, that bear no relationship to these symbols whatsoever, but they're still considered to be mysteries or whispers. I want to think of the Theban script, for example. So you can get like witchy books that say, there are runes in them, and it's not necessarily the Elder Futhark or any of the younger Futharks. And we also get rune can mean a spoken set of words, like a spell in itself. So Suzanne, you said witches' runes. Absolutely. There's also the witches' rune, which is a particular form of words, a particular spell, because if you think about it, it's like the witch's secret or the witch's mystery. So rune can be used in any number of different ways. What I'm talking about is the Futharks, particularly. I'm particularly talking about the Elder Futhark. That's the one that I teach, and I think that is important. I follow a path that is looking at the runes from multiple different perspectives of practice, and I decided that for me I wanted to go very deeply and to connect at a really deep energetic level with the runes, and that would be more potent for me as a practitioner if I stuck with one rune set. Now, we've done some really fun work in the mastery group, Suzanne's here, and you'll agree with this, I'm sure, on looking at some of a couple of the other runes in the other rune alphabets. It's a really fun thing to do. But I know that for me they blur sometimes, as meanings can blur a little bit, so I'm always a little bit careful. I try not to span too many systems all at once. But having said that, if you know a Futhak really well, you can look at the others and say, well, where are they related? How do the different runes work together? The Ansu's rune, for example, split into multiple runes in the Anglo-Saxon alphabet, so it's really, really interesting to look at that and to see how they move through. And there will be some of you who are not like me and who are able to retain in your minds, perhaps you've got a stronger sage energy and you're able to retain in your mind much more distinctly the different energies of those different Futhaks. But I'm really talking about the Elder Futhak tonight. Okay, so I want to tell you a little bit of a story. This is a story of a young man who he fell in love, you know. There was a girl across the way, you know, you would just go over the stream and round the hill, and she lived with her family in the sort of enclave further on from his, and he used to, you know, watch her, not in too weird a way, maybe a little bit creepy, I'm not sure. He was perhaps, you know, over the hedge, you know, she was wandering past, you know, talking with her friends. And he was a clever young man. But he was quite shy, and he didn't really know how to approach her. And he's, you know, they had this, you know, they would have all these the dance and things like that. And he was never like brave enough to go and have a chat with her and sort of find out about her and, you know, what she was interested in. He just looked at her from afar, you know. And he thought, oh, you know, I want to be with this girl. He didn't actually know that much about her, let's be honest. But, you know, he thought, oh, she's such a beauty. I want to be with her. And he thought, how am I going to woo this girl? How am I going to woo her? And he decided, in his clever wisdom, that the best way to do this was his grandfather had this chest in it, and in the chest was another little chest which he wasn't really supposed to look at, but he knew all about it because as a child he used to open the chest and look inside, and there were little carvings inside, and on the carvings were inscribed runes. You know, and I'm saying runes in the broad term here. These were like bind runes. This wasn't a single rune. This was lots of runes together. And he maybe had a slightly loose moral code, let's say, and there were times when his mother and father would ask the local wise woman to come round, and they would chat in the evenings, and the father would get out the runes, and the wise woman would be looking, and she'd say, oh, well, it's not really my thing. She was more of a herbalist. You know, she was much more into plant medicines and things, but she would look and she would say, oh, you know, I think this one's for, you know, the fertility of the cattle. You can put that, you know, paint it on the side of the cow and things, and this one, and every time this particular one would go past, she would say, that's the love one. She would whisper it, that's the love one. And he knew which one it was. So he was a clever young man. And he went and he found a piece of whalebone. You know, he wanted to invest properly in this. He sort of went to the market, found this whalebone, got the sigil out that night, the rune out, and he sort of sat there and he carved away at it. And he had this undying longing for this girl, you know, poured it all in there, carving it away. And then came the most audacious part of his plan, which he waited until the girl and her family were out. This was one of the times when the people from all of the different homesteads would come together, and he waited until they were all celebrating and doing all of the things, and then he snuck into the house and he went to the girl's bedroom. Don't ask me how he knew that it was the right bedroom. For all he knew, he might have been putting it in somebody else's bed entirely. But he got his whalebone and he tucked it in under the slats of her, you know, it was like a hay roll mattress, you know, with the slats underneath. He tucked it in under there. Oh, his heart was beating so fast, believe you me, you know. And they went home and he was like, let the magic work, let the magic work, let the magic work, let the magic work. Now, very next day, the girl falls sick. She's not just a little bit sick, she's really, really, really sick. Now he finds out from talking with one of his friends, because, you know, he's like, oh, how's you know, how's she doing? And oh, she's been sick, really, you know, it's been terrible, awful, because when she was at the, you know, at the do, her engagement to her young man was announced, and they were all set to be married, but now she's bedridden, and it's said that she might not survive. Oh, thought the boy, this has not gone according to plan. Eventually the girl's family, they looked at this and they said, there's something very wrong here. She was absolutely fine. Now look at her. And they thought about the wise woman, and they called in the wise woman, and the wise woman said, no, this is beyond my herbal remedies to deal with. I'm sorry. She said, you're going to need to bring in Eggle. Oh, Eggle's expensive, they said. Yep, she said, but if you want your daughter to survive, he's the one who can fix it. And so they sent for Eggle. And Eggle was a stern man, with this strong brow, and he was known throughout the land as a rune magician of unsurpassed talent. This is what everyone knew about Eggle. You don't mess with Eggle. That's what they knew about him. And so they called him, and he went to the girl's room. They said, she needs to be removed from the room. Carry her out. Carried her out. Just not going to look at the patient. And he went all through her room, and eventually he found the whalebone. Now, luckily, Eggle knew exactly what to do with that whalebone. And he took his knife and he scraped the runes off. And as he did so, he invoked the powers of the wind, and the powers of Odin, and the unfettering of Unsus to release this hideously executed bind rune. Pah, he said, as he got it off. No bind rune of mine, he said. Disgusting. Scraped it off, and he carved healing runes upon the whalebone. Placed it back under her bed. He said, bring her back in, and they brought her back in. He was like, right, pay me, thank you very much. And they gave their thanks to him, and they showed him great hospitality and all of the things that are required and expected, and they celebrated him. And sure enough, the next day the girl bounced out of bed, absolutely fine, good as new. And do you know what? Eggle crossed over the stream, and he went straight to that young man's house. And I don't know what he said to that young man, but I'm telling you this, that young man never went near a rune ever again in his whole life. No, he never went through his whole life. Now, some of you might be familiar with that it's one of the pieces from Egil's saga, and it talks about Egil and this girl, and I've sort of added a few extra bits there with the young man. We don't actually know what the intention of the young man was. It was thought that the woman was cursed, or that it was a love spell gone wrong, or maybe it was done on purpose. I like to think, when I was preparing that little telling for you, that she had already determined her fate. She was already in love with somebody else, and she determined her fate. And this spell that this young man cast, it was probably more his passion than anything that drove the energy of the runes. He wasn't a rune practitioner. He didn't actually know what he was doing, but he had this passion. And these runes, which in my view is probably much more likely that the majority of people that we hear about in the Icelandic magics were repeating symbols that they had been given. Like my father and my father's father used this symbol, we've always used that symbol, and they didn't actually know what the individual runes were, and that it was easily the case that sometimes they'll be replicated incorrectly. But I like to think that she had already bound her fate to this one young man, and so the sickness was almost like a resisting. The fate has now got crossed. The magic and the true flow of fate and the flow of magic had become horribly, inextricably knotted, and that was what was making the girl sick, this young man's intentions. Now, I tell this story because we can be a little bit afraid of how we start with runes, because we can think, what if I don't use the right one? What if I do it wrong? Aren't there some runes that are like wicked, naughty, bad runes? All of those things can get in the way of us starting a rune practice. Now, I know that a lot of you who are here live already are very, very skillful rune practitioners yourselves. So I'd love to know from you, do you remember what the first rune you ever worked with was? And by that I mean, rather than sort of reading in a book and being interested in a rune, rather, the first rune that you ever did any form of energetic connection work. Maybe you sang the rune, maybe you carved it into a candle, maybe you wore it and charged it in that way. What was the first rune that you ever worked with? And let me know about that. And I will share with you, for me, what I realised when I was working with my first ever rune is that at the time, I was a young adult, let's say, university, and I had two pendants that I would wear, and one of them was the Uru's rune for healing. I was wearing it for healing. It was given to me. It was my birth hour. Well, but I didn't know that at the time. I was just working with it. Krista just said Urus. It was Urus for me. And it's often a rune that we work with because we can go, it's a healing rune, so that's going to be good, and I'll work with that one. And then I had this other pendant that I would wear sometimes, which it was a maze. It was a little round maze, and it had a man on the back of it, and it sort of described to me how I was feeling at the time. So like trapped in this weird maze, let's say. And what I found really interesting is at that time I hadn't started my training as a magical practitioner. I was doing like magical work, as I think many of us do. We find from books, and we create. It's a very creative spirit, so I did a lot of making of things. And what I discovered was that when I was wearing the man in the maze pendant, which was still a symbol, it was a rune in the broadest possible sense, became more and more, it felt heavier and heavier and heavier when I wore it. And because I felt really heavy, I wore it a lot. Whereas the Uru's rune, I would wear that pendant and I would feel lighter and stronger and more empowered. And I'm not going to lie to you, during that period of time, I wore the man in a maze pendant a lot more because it was safer. It wasn't calling me into fierce healing of myself and stepping into my true power and all of those things that the runes can support for us. And it took me quite a while to realise that was happening and to sort of step into my brave a little bit. And I eventually buried the pendant with the man in the maze with various celebratory rites, and this time is past and I'm moving into Urus. And then Urus became an initiator for me, and I started to work with it much more deeply and to do some of the meditations that I've shared with some of you before. And I think that sometimes it is just by a little bit of trial and error and recognising the runes and what they can do, and how that one symbol could accrue quite a lot of negative energy for me, and yet the rune, even though I didn't, I was just wearing them interchangeably and things like that, was offering me something very different and something that was actually much better for me in many ways, is what I realised. Suki says, I always try to dodge Argalaz. I first worked with Feyu. Yes, and that's actually very natural. Very natural. We go, why would I want the hailstorm? Why would I want it? Because they are each initiators. Sorry, I don't know why my thing is being. I think it's because somebody's messaging me. I hope that's not going to be off-putting for you. I can't see where it is. And they can be. We can feel like, oh no. But each of the runes, they have their empowering sides, all of them. And they also have their fiercer side. So Urus wasn't like, I'm going to wrap you in feathers and make you safe and comfortable and all of those things. No, it was saying, follow me onto the wide plains and we will roar like the aurochs and head into the distance where you will bathe in the waters of weird and emerge renewed. And you will not know yourself. Oh, really? Okay. So, they can all offer that, but they're very powerful healing forces. Susanna is saying Isa. Some of the first magical work that I did with the body was with the Isa rune. Really powerful work that we can do with the body, with embodied practice and standing in your own power with the Isa rune. Maggie is saying Algiz. A lot of people work with Algiz because it's a wonderful rune for protection, and we can wear that. Again, it's often a pendant. You often see Urus. You often see Algiz as a pendant. Grace, you've put Feyu, and again Feyu, because we can feel about that as wealth, that we want to bring in wealth or abundance or fertility into our life, or magic, the power of magic, luck, all of those things come through with the Feyu rune. Sarah's saying yes, Algus for defense and protection. It's a beautiful rune working for defense and protection. ID saying, I worked with Issa and Suelo first as a kid. Oh, what a lovely balance. It was a ritual I had where I would start barefoot on the snow, then gently walk into the cold and run off and then lay in the sun. Well, I don't know about everybody else, but I'm doing that now. It doesn't snow here very often, but do we all want to join IDs? Let me know. Does everyone want to join IDs now? Because we all want to do that, because that sounds so cool. And I wish that that was my story. I love it so much. And as has been said, the runes speak to us with natural forces, don't they? They invite us in to work with the healing forces of nature. Pamela's got Rado, rhythm of Rado. Oh, the drumming of Rado. It's so much what we Rado in my shamanic drum. Lisa, Dargaz for scrying. Yes, perfect. You know, in so many different ways, and we use the Dargaz rune and trace it and look through it, and it enhances our psychic and seership powers beautifully. Algis definitely tests the ability to set boundaries, and this is very true, isn't it? You look at Algis and you go, oh, Algis is the beautiful protection rune, it's going to be there, but they're all teachers. So Algis will be like, okay, and I'm here and I'm protecting you and that's good, but I also need you to learn how to protect your own boundaries. No, what's going on there? You can't call on me all of the time. Eventually I need you to be the embodiment of my power, walking on earth, supporting others and becoming a guide. Like, oh, I only called on you because I wanted to stop my neighbour from shouting over the fence at me. Go, now I'm going to be a guide of souls, am I? They do that, don't they? Pamela says, love the herd aspect of the horse and individual together. Oh, so I can really feel that with your radar rune as well. There's beautiful energy there. ID says it's lovely, it sounds lovely. Grace says, I'm in. We're all joining IDs, thank you very much. Thank you, IDs. We look forward to visiting you and doing that in the future. So as I've described to you, and as you've given such beautiful examples there, we can work with the runes as they call to us, and we can choose a rune. We can work with the sage self to choose a rune. But what I wouldn't recommend that you do is to, take a complicated bind rune that you don't know what it means and use that as your first magical act. This is another thing when I think about my man in the maze pendant. I love that pendant so much. But whereas at the Uruz rune, I got it from a shop where the lady explained to me what the Uruz rune was, and I did my research about it and all of those things. The man in the maze pendant never found out what the intention was that the maker had held in their mind as they created that pendant. And the meanings that I created around that sense of almost like being trapped, but it was also hidden because the maze was on one side and the man was on the other. So it was like I was hiding behind the maze. All sorts of things that my brain, and therefore all of my magical energy, accrued to in that symbol that didn't have the same. I wanted to use the word pedigree then. I'm not sure that that's what I meant. The same long ancient heritage that each of the runes does. That even the runes like Hargalaz or Thurisaz or Northiz all offer healing in the sense of supporting you to stand in your greatest power. It's not always healing. Here's a plaster and you'll feel better. No, we're going to make you stand in your greatest power. Man in the maze symbol, not so much. And this is why it's really important to to work in ways that feel safe with the runes and to work with them one at a time before we start trying to sort of move them together. And we can do that with our building our sage knowledge, our knowledge of what each of the runes means, reading the rune poems. We can work with it for seership. You can do your rune of the day. If you've got a rune set, you can draw your runes. We're going to be doing that shortly with our stay and play. You can use my rune of the day generator online, and it gives you some of the meanings for each of the runes. You can work that way. You can work with the mystical pathway, the discovery pathway, where you choose a rune to work with, and that's one of the reasons why I have all of my meditations on YouTube for people who are, want to start out or to begin to understand how this works. Hopefully you'll then join Awaken, which is a much deeper journey. But they're all there for each of the runes. I've done a meditation. Some of them have got a couple, so that you can experience what it's like to be inside a rune, to walk within a landscape of a rune. for yourself to activate that mystic self, your own mystical connection with them. And you can work with the paths of the magician and the healer, particularly if you've done magics before or you've done healing work before. Then on my Elder Futhop pages on www.meganrose.com, you will find correspondences for each of the runes. So if you're already working with essential oils, for example, you can then say, okay, so I've already worked with these essential oils. These runes they resonate with those essential oils. Their nature resonates with them, which is essentially where most of the correspondences are coming from. Most of them are relatively modern. Not all, but most are. And they are created by people who worked with the runes and had expertise with essential oils or crystals or whatever it is. And they said, oh, chanting urus, feeling that, and then this particular stone or crystal, you join them together and the energy gets bigger. They're resonating together in that way. So you can start to bring those in. It's a really nice way into the runes. Lovely to see you, Suzanne. To work with them in that way. So if you already are doing magical works, manifestation work, and you think, I'd like to have a way into the runes to start to work with them, you can do it in that way. So lots of different ways in which we can work with our runes. And we are going to be working all the way through this lunar cycle on working with the runes in different forms, working with them as guides, looking at the correspondences, how did they come about, how can we start to work with them. It's a very exciting dive into rune practice through the course of this coming month over here in the Heart Space and on Magic in Mind. So let's have a look at the lunar cycle. People have put in so much lovely stuff there, and I'm glad that you like that, Sarah, that the runes teach us to embody embody their power and embody our power as well. Yeah, they do both. And on that front, tell me, if you think about celebrating your own journey into wholeness or your own setting of intentions or your own growth, let me know, what are you celebrating from the lunar cycle that's just come? I'm going to move into looking at the lunar cycle now. And today, when you're all joining me here live, we're on the final day before the new moons. We've got our new moon in Largus coming up. So what are you celebrating? What are you proud of? What do you just want to say, yes, I really want to do that? And what are your intentions for the coming lunar cycle? What would you like to bring into being, other than we're all going to go and visit ID Snow and do walking in the snow and then moving into the warmth, which sounds fabulous, obviously. Maggie says, I'm celebrating that I'm finally getting surgery on my icing. Oh, that's wonderful, Maggie. I'm so pleased for you. Celebrating that for you. I love it when something that we've been waiting for and wanting comes, and I bet you anything that you're standing in your brave in terms of doing that as well. So we salute you as well, that you're going to be going and doing that. Suki says, a new mini pond in the garden, intentions, more knitted toys for kids to find. Oh, Suki, that's so wonderful. I'm feeling you on the pond. I've been working on the pond. Well, you probably can't see this here, but my arm, probably can't see it in the light, is covered in tiny little grazes all over it, because we had this huge bramble that had sprung up right behind our pond. We've got a raised pond that's next to the fence, and this bramble had come up there, and I've been wrestling with that bramble all day yesterday. I filled 6 sacks with bramble working with it, so I'm celebrating that. So we both have ponds that we're celebrating there, and I love that. Knitted toys for children to find is such a beautiful intention to have. And Grace is saying, proud of my kids at camp who did a great performance in a world fusion band. Yay! Love it. And I love that you're celebrating. We've got people celebrating their kids, and we've got people offering things out into the world for other people's kids as well. It's brilliant. I love it. And Maggie, I intend to use this as an opportunity for openness and a new perspective. Yes, I love that. That's beautiful. It's lovely to set an energetic intention behind something that we've got to, because you might sort of like quite medicalize something, but to actually sort of say, what does it mean for my mind, my body and my spirit, is a beautiful way of doing it. Kristen's son's high school graduation. Yay! Look at this, all bringing family and friends and community in. Grace's intention to have a positive journey back home, to visit my family and to really slow down. I like that very much. And Sarah, celebrating an opportunity to take lots of time off work and devote myself to magical studies and reconnect to nature and my spiritual roots. Wow, what brilliant celebrations and intentions we have in this group. So if you are joining afterwards for the replay, pop hashtag replay in, because it's always lovely. And please do, share your celebrations and intentions. It's lovely when that happens, either on the YouTube channel. I get quite a few people who sort of say hello on the YouTube channel, or in the hearth space. Please do keep them coming, because they're such lovely, and it's a wonderful, lovely energy to be in. So I know I do have my drinking horn, but I'm drinking tea. I'm not going to lie to you at this time. So I say Wunyo to you with my drinking horn, and Wunyo to you with my tea, because you are all fabulous. And Heidi says, I celebrate having the courage to start new things. Yes. Celebrating the courage to start new things. Now, I'm really pleased that everyone has set such beautiful intentions, and that you've also brought such wonderful celebrations into this space. Wunyo, says Pamela. Because we've got a planetary movement coming through the course of this cycle that I've been waiting for like literally months now, months and months and months, since the previous year. And we had a taster of it. So this is a movement of Urd's chariot, which is Uranus. And it was it moved very briefly out of Largus, the rune of water. There are so many planets in the sign of water. Now come tomorrow, we have the new moon, which new moon in Largus, sun in Largus, Urd's chariot in Largus. It's Largusing, it's Largus central tomorrow. Now the water energy is out there. The veils between the worlds are thinner than thin. Who knows what's going to happen there? There's possibilities everywhere, and this has been going on for some time. This sense of new possibilities opening up, which I find fascinating. And it's not just veils between the seen and the unseen. These are all sorts of veils and boundaries and beliefs that people have held, and ways that of being. We've just had all the mayoral elections over here in the UK, and they've been really interesting. This whole sort of relationship between like local and national, or global and national, and all of these things are playing out at this point, and this Largus energy has sort of brought that through, like really, really crystallized it. But as of the 8th, so 2 days time as of this recording, but for probably many of you it will be either on the 8th or afterwards, Urd's chariot's going to move into Ingus, which is a very different energy. So Ingus is the rune of the seed. It's the rune of gestation. It's mainly seen as a masculine rune, which is really interesting when you think about gestation. But it's less about the sort of the womb space of gestation, which you might see as being more like Bacchano, and it's more what is being gestated. It's the, as I said, it's the seed there. Now, for some of you, you might be more familiar with the shape, having a little chevron above and one below, like a little helix. Sometimes people see it as the DNA, almost like the seed of our DNA, or the lineage of the ancestors moving through. DNA is one of the ways that you can look at it. And Urd's chariot, the Nornir of the past, but I think that Urd's chariot brings in all three of the Nornir, past, present and future. It is a really collective, it's an energy that affects us on a collective level. It's those moments when the scales have tipped and all of us will be affected by them. It's like the die is cast, the way has been set. There's a karmic aspect, a really strong karmic aspect to this chariot. And what it was signifying to me when I felt into the energy last time, because Urd's chariot moved very briefly into Ingus back in 2023, and I was like, I felt like a massive shift. I'm not going to lie to you. And it was a bit like it was saying, the word blueprint just came to mind. It was like the blueprint for what is and what will be has now been set. Your opportunity to change and shift and adapt and do this and do that has now passed. The form is set, and you can pour energy in. You can fertilize that seed and make it grow and do all of those things, but what you can't do is change the seed. The seed is there. And then Urd's chariot went into retrograde, or on retreat as I like to call her, and she went back into Largus, and it was a bit like what she was saying. So if you think that you might have got a few aspects of your life a bit wrong, you've got a few more months to fix it. But once we get onto the 8th of May, that's it, you're done. So the reason that I say that is because it's not necessarily about I am now leading the perfect life and everything is fine. It is about saying every day I am intentionally bringing into my life the things that are important to me. Now, I am standing for what I believe in. I am living from my own truth and my own integrity. After the 8th of May, those things where we felt like, oh, we're not really living in integrity, and I messed that bit up, and I sort of like, I put the wool over my eyes and I pretended it wasn't happening and things like that, which is understandable. No, totally understand it. It will just be harder to make that shift into something that feels more positive. So this is why this has been very important. So this is the seed that has been sown that we have with Ud's chariot. The other thing that I wanted to mention is our lunar moments. So we've got the new moon in Largus, and then we have got a full moon in Northes, this energy of fire. And IDs, when you were talking about the ice and the fire with Isa and Suelo, you've got a sort of similar, you've got like water and fire, the sort of Largus energy of the deeps, and then the burning flame of desire with the Northes rune. And it's going to be really fabulous, I think, very powerful full moon. And the other thing to mention is the movements of the sun. So I work with, when we work on the Awaken program, and we work through all 24 of the runes through the course of a year, we use the movements of the sun to support us in connecting with the runes, because when the sun moves into the sphere of a rune, it tends, I have found over experience, over working in this way now for like 14 years, that the sort of purest form of the rune is available to us at that point. Like Ud's chariot has got its own agenda a little bit, so it's going to be sort of pushing Ingu's in a particular direction. But when we're working with the sun, it's more of a, like, Ingu's on its own, and the sun is just shining its light, and it's making the rune more powerful. So it's a really powerful time to work with your runes. So we're in Largus, then we're going to move into Ingu's for the sun, and then we're going to move into Athala towards the end of this lunar month. So lots to play with. For those of you who are already members of Sooner Starwell, you will have your new moon in Largus wild voice journaling session to support you in connecting with your magical voice and finding what is it that the rune wants to say to you. You'll have all of your planetary movements and your further 3 journaling sessions as well to work with through those. If you do not yet have Sooner Starwell and you're thinking, why do I not have Sooner Starwell? I'm a fool. You can still get it. And on the hub, on the online hub, all of those resources are still available for you, so you can still find them, even though the email that has everything in it has gone out, but you can still get all of the resources there. So with that in mind, tell me, what rune is guiding you today? We're going to have a little bit of a stay and play session for those of you who have been with me from the beginning. You can share your runes with me that you're working with at the moment, and we'll do some mini readings. Suki is saying Largus fell out of the sky, rain for 3 days. Oh yeah, it has rained and rained and rained here as well. It has been really, really wet. Yeah, I was talking about ponds, and you mentioned about ponds, didn't you? And it wasn't just me working with ponds. My youngest was playing in my mum's garden. We went for my birthday, and we were there in the garden, and he put his feet in the pond. I don't know how it is that he does it. He just sort of seemed to like walk through it. She's got 2 ponds, and luckily it was the small one, the little one for frogs and things. Let me see where we are. Grace has got Iwas. Kristen has got Rado. I'm just going to write these down so they don't disappear off my screen. Suki's got Wunyo, Suki. We've got 2 with Dargaz, Meggie and Sarah. Oh no, Meggie and Meggie. Dargaz has popped up. Oh, I see what you mean. She's you can't see it if you're looking at the video, but you've put Dagas by mistake, haven't you? Which is like Dallas. Dallas has popped up, but no, Dargaz. Autocorrect, yeah. Silly autocorrect. One day it will know all of the runes, I'm absolutely certain. But then we do have a double. We've got Sarah and then IDs both have the Ansu's rune. Okay, let's start with those, and then we will carry on. Oh, Pamela's got Ingus. Look, they're coming through fast now. They're coming through. Pamela, that's very powerful for you. That's my rune of the month as well. I pulled Ingus and I thought, look at me, I'm so in line with what's happening. With the energies of the month, so we can both feel very smug, Pamela, that we've got the Ingus rune there, that it's a very powerful, potent rune, and that we are setting new blueprints for our lives moving forwards. Let's look, Grace. Let's think of you with your Iwas rune then, Grace. It's funny. You're reminding me, I've got a staff here, and it's got the Dargaz rune. It's the one in the sort of corner there. She sort of stays there and guards the room, and she's quite She's a birch staff that I made years and years ago, and I carved the runes into her. And as I saw your Iwas rune, I almost sort of felt the way my fingers feel when they sort of move over her body, and that's what it feels like to me. Is that, you know, I carve them in. She's quite delicate, so I don't take her out very much, but she's a protective energy that is a rooted protective energy, and I think that's what is coming through for me. It's interesting that Kristin's rune has come up as the Rado rune after yours, which is thinking about Iwaz as the staff that is used to walk with, but what I'm seeing is Iwaz as a rooted energy here. So there's our Iwaz rune for everyone to see there. So we've got the as above, so below is coming through for me there. So the Iwaz rune has got its vertical axis, and then it's got a little flick at the top and at the bottom. And that's sort of what it feels like to me, is a reminder of how when we do our magical work, we are seeking to influence the physical world around us in many cases, or to, you know, have inner transformation. And it's a reminder, I think, that it works both ways, and that when we are working in a very, you know, some people might say like a mundane way, that equally flows through into the magical world. And it's sort of this sense of when we live more fully, we're aligned with our values, or we're more connected to nature, or we're doing work with our children, or that celebration and those sorts of things, that is an invocation of magic into our lives. And it's trusting that part of ourselves. I'm almost seeing it as the Iwaz energy as being a pillar that is purely energetic, around which a community gathers. And we might not even know we're doing it. Perhaps I'm thinking a little bit of Beltane and the maypole, and thinking about the significance of the maypole. Perhaps that's in my mind somewhere coming through with the Iwaz rune. But it is this sense of creating a gathering point, and recognizing that every year that we repeat a particular ritual or a particular cycle or a way of being, we're witnessed. The Iwaz staff is a connection between us and spirit, deity, a connection between the earth and the stars. It's that conduit around which energy gathers, and it holds that energy within it. That's its job, is to hold on to that energy. And so when we create those objects, like magical objects in our homes, and then we whisper into them and we talk to them of our desires, and then we do we live in line with those desires, those magical objects hold that energy, and they resonate it back out to us, you know, and affect the ambience, for want of a better word, around us, and they perpetuate the wishes that we have created for ourselves and our community. So it's a little bit like Iwaz being a spirit partner that grows with us, is the way that I'm feeling into it. So it's a bit of a long one there, Grace, but I hope that it was helpful. It came through quite strongly, so I'm going to leave that one there with you right now. Whereas Kristin, the Rado rune, as I said with Grace, often when I feel the Iwaz energy, it's more like a staff that a person is holding, and that it's supportive, but I didn't feel that in the same way. And then I'm seeing for you the Rado rune of the road, almost like this road winding outwards, and this sense of you standing on the edge. So your feet aren't on the road yet, and it's like you're seeing that road in front of you, and you're going, oh, what is it that I need in order to step onto the road? And I think that's the question for you, is sort of saying, I'm not hesitating. There's something that I need, there's something that I'm waiting for that is important for me to take this journey. And I think the Rado rune, we were talking about this today. I was talking with one of my clients, we were talking about timing, and how Rado is a rune of rhythm. You know, it sort of says, it doesn't say, look, set out unprepared. No, it does. It's like, yeah, that preparation is key. So there's something, Kristin, I think, for you that you need. I'm just holding up the Rado rune for people to see that Rado rune there. Rune of the road. Before you set out on the journey, what is it that you need to take with you? Suki has got Wunyo, the rune of belonging and joy. Here's our Wunyo rune. I always feel as if they come up in a particular order for a particular reason. There's a lightness of being, I think, Suki, with this Wunyo rune. A sense of an understanding that you already possess, that people can put the pursuit of like happiness and joy on so high up. They can sort of make it seem so far away, and so like, I need to have this, and 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 I can't possibly be happy until I have all of those things. And I feel as if Wunyo is saying, it's almost celebrating you and saying, you get that you don't have to have this and this and this and this and this and this and this in order to be happy. You can choose to find that happiness in the moment and to make it with the small things, rather than placing that pressure on, I will never be happy until all of these things occur. And I feel as if there's a real mastery there for you, Suki, and that the Wunyo rune is asking you to recognize that within yourself, that you teach others how to find happiness in the moment, in those small things. And we could spend our whole lifetimes creating a list of things, and then we achieve the things and we never enjoy them, because the minute that you're there, the next list is on the horizon. And you never get to be in the moment. And I think that the teaching there is the being in the moment. And I do think, as if Wunyo is saying, this is already yours, recognise it, celebrate it. Maggie, you've got your Dargaz. I'm fascinated that you've got Dargaz, and that you're having that work done with the eyes. And I wonder whether there is perhaps a ritual to be done, so that you can step as with as much like wholeness and fullness and a claiming for your body of an adjusted, like different state, of gathering in the gifts that the current state offers. What are the ways of seeing and of perceiving and of experiencing that you have enhanced over the years to compensate? And how do you make sure that you don't lose some of them when you move forward? That they remain just as powerful and potent. And I feel as if they will help. They will sort of like help your physical eyes in that sense. That it's again, it's a little bit like with Sukha, when we were talking about how we can create expectation. And I'm not saying you're doing that, but that sense of which we can be like, I'm looking at the future and what it's going to be like, and I want to be able to be like present in the current moment, and to receive from the past as well as from the future. And I'm just seeing you, it's just a really strong image of the third eye, and almost like a butterfly painted on the forehead there. And then as that comes, I see them blooming like on your hands and on your shoulders. And it's almost that sense of going, every single cell in my body is an exquisite receiving of the world. Dargaz is everywhere in me. And my eyes are looking forward to something different, But the Dargaz energy, again, there's a claiming there. I feel as if there's a claiming there, a sort of claiming of your power as a seeress, is what I'm feeling there. Sarah and Idis with your Ansu's rune. I've got to breathe that one out a little bit. That was quite full. The Ansu's rune. Whereas the Dargaz rune and the Ansu's rune, they're quite powerful runes that can feel intangible in some way, because there's an airiness to the Ansu's rune. There's a current and a flow and a sort of an abandonment in some ways, and we can miss the ordering qualities that the Ansu's rune also brings. It's the rune of speech, the rune of the voice as well, that we can ululate with a sort of wild abandon. We can create noises with our mouths that have meanings that we've forgotten how to use because we rely so heavily on language. So we could say, I'm feeling really anguished right now. Really anguished. You can see how anguished I'm feeling, can't you? Is not the using of our whole voice, And I think that that is what's being offered here for both of you, actually, and for all of us. Perhaps there's maybe this is building on from Maggie's as well, this sense of the sensory experience, whereas Dargaz is often like a receiving and a stepping into the new. Ansu's, there's a receiving through the breath, and then there's an expressing out. And I think what Ansu's is doing is it's saying, how can you use your body even more fully as a vehicle of voice, as a vehicle of self-expression in the world? If you didn't have language, how would you express yourself and your intention? And I'm not thinking sort of the sort of charades, pointing and all of those sorts of things, but how can we express our feelings and our desires and what we're present to in the moment right now? There's like looking at animal sounds in particular, where the animals communicate with each other, and the way that they simply express the roar of the bear, the song of the birds, all of those things are coming through, but also our body language, the language of the body, the language of our expression, all of that's coming through to me in terms of claiming the power of Ansu's. And recognising that in the Ansu's rune we have this exquisite dance of wildness and creativity and of order and structure that is required for us to communicate to someone else in order for us to be received by someone else. So there's sort of agreed standard of communication, but it's also renewing itself all of the time. We have particular patterns of speech that we start to use. We will often, if we get to know someone really, really well, we will use the same phrases as them. Our pitch might change to match theirs. Very common technique to use when you're seeking to communicate with somebody else is to match their body language and their pitch and their tone, and you create rapport in that way as well. So there's this sense of a dance, that requires us to be coordinated. It's not sort of organised or wild. It's like coordinated in some way with each other that I'm feeling with the Ansu's rune as well for both of you there. Pamela has got Ingus. What does Ingus want to bring through? We've talked quite a lot about Ingus. I felt really strongly this Ingus energy. So what's coming through there that's different from today? It's funny, as I'm speaking, I'm feeling that desire to actually to close my eyes, and I think that's the key thing here, is almost to recognise that if we want to sow new seeds out into the world, if we want to be out there saying, I'm going to do this, 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 we have to recognise that we are the seed. That when you go out and you say to somebody, I've had this amazing idea and it's going to be brilliant, it's going to be wonderful, the idea, you are the vessel for that idea. And if you come along, and again, Pamela, I'm not suggesting that you would do this. This is the example that I'm giving you. Like, I've got a really good idea and it's going to change the world. It's not the same as going, I've got this amazing idea. It's going to change the world. And I believe in it, and I've got my own energy behind it. So it's treating yourself as part of the seed and saying, whatever the idea is, whatever the thing that wants to birth through me, it isn't me. That's important for us to recognise that we are, otherwise we attach our own value to the things that we're doing out there in the world, and we're just all valuable because we're brilliant. We don't need to do anything in order to prove ourselves in that way. But in the moment when we're flowing with a new idea or a new project, or we're speaking to somebody else and we want to build rapport, and we want them to receive the excitement of what it is that we're doing, we have to recognise that we need to nurture ourselves in the same way. So when I was closing my eyes, I was literally like, I just want to get one of those eye masks right now and be cocooned in the dark and just let myself be the seed for a while and sit with the seed. And there's the gestation piece as well, I think, of saying sometimes an idea, we can get into our Ansu's phase a little bit too quickly. I've had this idea, I've got to go and share it with somebody else immediately, it's going to be brilliant, it's going to be wonderful, rather than saying, actually, I'm going to allow it to gestate. I'm going to allow it to be in me, and I'm going to trust that all of the pieces will come through in the way that they're meant to, and I don't yet need anybody else's input in order for that to happen. So that might be there a little bit as well, that sort of patience and gestating piece. And almost allowing yourself to actively gestate, you know, to think about what that's like. What is it that we do when we're growing life inside us, whether that's a human life or whether it's a project or, you know, a dream or an idea. How do we nest? How do we create a nest for that thing that we want to nurture? And yeah, we are the nests. We have to look after ourselves. Lisa's Rado last cycle and Rado again for next. Wow, the Rado energy. It really. Did you have a period? Did you have a period with Hargalaz, Lisa, or has it been Rado for a while now? I feel as if it's been Rado for a while now for you. It really wants you to dig deep, doesn't it, into that Rado energy. Let me just have a little feel if there's anything else to go on with from the, because we had Rado once and it was talking about rhythm, wasn't it? It was talking about what is it that I need to move on. I think the only things I would add to that, Lisa, would be a recognition that sometimes what we need in order to move on the road is a recognition that we are creating the road as we go, and that sometimes we need to leave the trail for others to follow. That's the sense that I'm getting there. It's almost that sense of, how do I leave the trail for others to follow? How do I share my knowledge or my experience? How do I leave a legacy of the road behind as I'm going? Is, I think, the question that comes to mind. Is similar to what we had before, with that sense of what is it that I need before I can move forward in the journey. But I think there's a little bit there from Rado about saying, how do you how do you leave the road behind? You know, how do you leave your tracks as you go? Sarah says, what you're saying resonates with Iwaz, with the rune poem that calls it the Keeper of Winter's Fire. Communities gather around divinity. You're right, there is that fire, isn't there? And it's the keeper of the fire. Thank you for a reminder on that one. Kristen says, thank you. Suki says, thank you, been trying so hard to get back to Africa for holidays. Things not falling into place. So, yes, okay, we'll make toys for kids to find places. Good. We affirm that and we celebrate that in you, Suki. And hopefully those other things, that bigger life magic will come to pass for you. Amazing. Really feeling the feeling of making it into a ritual and claiming myself. Yay, that's brilliant. And yes, Sarah saying intuitive motion is important for me to receive inspiration and connect with the inner voice. Beautiful. And Idisa saying thank you much for your insight. Fabulous. So we are going to be working with runes all through this coming cycle, and I am very gently feeling into the energy of the sage. We're working with the sage through this coming cycle, and the runes wanted to be our guides themselves. So we have got the seers retreat tomorrow. I'm looking forward to seeing some of you. I can see on the call here who are going to be there tomorrow to reclaim the power of the seer after that cycle. And now we are moving into working with gently and lightly with the energy of the sage through working with our runes. It has been an absolute delight seeing so many of you here this evening. Thank you for joining me at this later time. We will be at normal time next week and the week after that, and then we have another bank holiday here in the UK on the 27th, I want to say. Is that right? Don't quote me on that one, but there'll be another one where we're coming together a little bit later as well. So love and blessings to you all, and see you very, very soon.